everyone, Josh Eidengon, DXC Properties. Excited to be here. We're going to talk through a case study today, Cottages by the Bay. This is a community that we owned and sold. What we're going to do is take you through from the beginning of finding the deal, some of the challenges in putting the deal together, story, motivation behind the deal, go through some pictures on the beforehand side, the after side, talk through some of the challenges associated with it, dig into some of the numbers, and really bottle that up into a 15, 20-minute overview of this deal. So with that, we'll jump right in. So backstory, Cottages by the Bay, not the prior owner had purchased it in a big portfolio sale, distressed, bought this deal at a significant discount. They're not multifamily owners by any means. They owned a lot of industrial, office, retail. This was part of that package. So this was definitely an outlier for them. This was back in 2012 that they bought the property. So it was coming out of a recession where this area was hit particularly hard. So they bought it at a discount. It wasn't being aggressively managed. They basically had their own staff that were not necessarily property management professionals, but they were in there and operating the property. It was not just call it tracked like you would expect it to be on the financial side. So there was a lot of unwinding of their financials to get it into just a logical order. So you could tell there was just a lack of professionalism on the ownership side. It was a loan assumption. So they bought this deal. At first, they bought it all cash. They refinanced right away to get their cash back out of it. And it was with a life company and a loan assumption. So they went to a pretty large broker in the Southeast. And he went then to a handful of buyers that he knew could act on this deal size. So I was one of a handful of people that they reached out to for this deal. And it had its challenges. Like I said, just not the easiest to read financials. So you're not buying this type of deal on a cap rate. You're buying it for the future value that you can create and put into it. That being number one as a challenge. Number two, it was a loan assumption through a life company. Not everyone, especially on a smaller deal, is going to be able to or want to take on a loan assumption. But we were drawn to it. We liked the story. We liked the motivation. And we really like the immediate area, which drives most of our acquisitions here. So property itself, 70 units, cardinal style. You can see some of the pictures here. Hopefully they're not too cut off, but cardinal style construction is what you're seeing on the top right here. It's basically one story, modular type construction. You see a lot of 70s and 80s vintage Cardinal products. The idea with this construction, when Cardinal was around as a company, was they wanted to create your entry-level apartment living where you could basically order parts, replacement pieces, everything out of a catalog. Built for a renter, meant to be extremely efficient. So if the units are all identical throughout the country, you could see these deals in the Midwest and the Southeast. You don't see them much in the Northeast or West Coast. But I could tell you that a studio, a one bedroom, a two bedroom, I could draw you those floor plans regardless of where those properties are located. So when operated correctly, can be very, very efficient. They all have these PTAC units, so hot and cool through here. And the original one's wallpaper, again, with the intention of just quick turns, getting a new tenant in there, really meant as a renter type of unit. This is in Panama City Beach, Florida. So at our timing, we really liked the location of the asset more than anything else. It's an area that's not entirely reliant on one industry, although it's at the same time and in the same breath. It's predominantly military and tourism. So if you're going, especially a lot of people that may live in Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, they may want to get to the beach. Panama City is definitely a destination for that. So, that's a big driver of the economy. At the time when we were involved in this deal, we weren't necessarily too concerned about it because we were never looking at it as a long-term investment. It was something we wanted to come in, operate well, turn it around, and be out basically within 5 years at most. So you can see 1985 vintage. Cardinal deals tend to be smaller unit sizes, again, because they were built with the thought process of efficiency in mind. So you can see the average rents for them, predominantly one bedrooms, where their average rents were about $690, and across all the units, $686 among the 70 units. You could see some interior pictures, and we'll hit on a few others. It's, again, throughout the country, this is generally what you'll see. Maybe the countertops will be different, but this wood look type of cabinetry and vanities is very, very common. You can see the wallpaper, and often a lot of beiges and browns just throughout. Some other pictures of the community, again, more pictures showing the single-story living. With this type of unit, you often attract an older tenant, older demographic, because they have the walk-up feature. So some of the garden-style apartments that are 2, 3, 4 stories, it's going to be less attractive for a 65, 70-year-old retiree that has knee issues from wanting to walk up 3, 4 flights of stairs. So you can often really attract that tenant base, and if you do it well, those tenants are typically not the ones causing issues. They're typically pretty easy tenants to deal with. Another perk of Cardinal apartments is that you do have a little outdoor space, like you could see in the top right here. It's just a little living area that it's just a nice feature and makes it feel like a little more of a home than an apartment. So location itself, more than anything, like I alluded to before, we're location driven. What we loved about it is, one, it's right off of Thomas Drive, and we had visibility on a pretty main road, although we weren't right up against it, so we didn't have the car noise associated with it. So we had an opportunity to add signage right on that street, which was great. This is the main street to take you from Thomas Drive. It's the main street to take you from downtown Panama City to Panama City Beach. So great visibility. Within 2 miles of the property, you had a Publix. You have a lot of familiar shopping centers. You have a Winn-Dixie, a Dunkin' Donuts, Wells Fargo. And then at the same time, really good proximity to some employers. So the Naval Coastal Systems Center is within 2 miles of the property. So you're able to tap into either a military presence or perhaps family of military that were there, and that's a base that has been there forever. They actually do all the training for submarines, as I understand it, or at least a lot of training for submarine operators. So that's a plus. And then within 5 miles of the property, you had a number of big box retailers, and on top of that, some new retailers coming in, which was just a positive that we liked about the area. Something that stood out for this deal, especially when you talk Florida properties, it had a great elementary school that it was within 2 miles of. Not always the case in Florida. No offense to any Florida people listening in. So we'll look at deals that are not in the best school systems by any means, but if you are in one, it's a great plus and something that you could often cater to and around. And lastly, high median home prices. So this is an area where at the time, even back in when we bought the deal 2014, home prices were over $200,000 in that immediate area. So it was strong. It's not like a renter that was paying $650 can jump to buying a $200,000 home, whereas if the median home price was $50,000, it'd be much easier for that entry-level renter to take the leap to home ownership. So some of the purchase economics with this deal, this is really why we liked it more than anything else, the all-in basis. So we bought this deal at $2,380,000 or $34,000 a unit, all in to less than $39,000 a unit. And you saw where the rents were at the time, over $650. So at a very high level, it just made sense. We knew that it was operating poorly. There was high delinquency. Expenses were running high. But at the same time, we knew a base of expenses that this property should run around. And that's what we were really driving towards, just creating some efficiencies here. There was a loan assumption, so $1,687,000 left on that loan, held by a life insurance company. An interesting loan, and you'll see it among insurance companies fairly often, is that they don't always do 30-year amortizing loans like you'll see from agency debt, the Fannie or Freddie. They do more commonly 20 and 25-year debt. So this loan was on a 20-year amortization. Another reason why we were really drawn to the property is that it cash flowed pretty well on a 20-year amortization. So we were paying down basically 4.5%, 5% plus in principal each year, on top of cash flowing 7% plus. So we really like that. Love the safety associated with it. Just over 4.5%, and there were 6 years remaining on that loan, which was plenty for us to either get in and exit in a few years, and or refinance 6 years later. So you can see on the sources and uses side, and this might be a little bit cut off, but if not, I'll talk through it. Acquisition loan, $1,687,000. Equity, we raised a little bit over $1 million for this deal. And then on the right, you can see the purchase price. The renovations consisted of $220,000. That was a combination of some exterior improvements, which we'll talk through, some modest interior improvements, and really just a bucket of reserves for us to draw from for unknowns and the transition stepping into the deal. So then closing cost, fee for acquisition fee, and then the totals align on the source and uses side. So what was the business plan for this deal? Rebrand. So it used to be called Cypress Apartments. It was called Cypress Apartments for a long, long time. We needed to get away from that name. So we did just that. You'll see the new signage we brought in a new professional property manager. So this is a property manager that was in the area, manages over 30,000 units total, very comfortable with the area and just driving success there. We needed to wean off of concessions any way we could. They were running a lot of concessions to keep the property filled for resale, which is a great way to put a Band-Aid on an issue, but not necessarily a long-term fix. Curing deferred maintenance, so there was wood rot. We wanted to replace doors. Again, like you saw, a lot of beige, just a dated look. Where it's near the beach, we really felt we could cater to just an improved demographic. I wanted to bring some life to it. Fence repairs, and just do interior renovations with a pretty modest and defined plan. So we weren't contracting out 10 units to a contractor that would charge us, $10,000, $12,000, $13,000 for an upgrade. We were being very strategic and having our on-site staff do unit upgrades in-house as much as possible. So we wanted to do that and really just drive performance, best-in-class appearance, performance, and holding the property for cash flow to an exit. So you could see the new signage that we brought in, just something a little more hip, modern, nothing crazy here. You can see we landscaped, but again, not wildly expensive, but at the same time, a very fresh new look to a property that hadn't seen change in 10, 15 years. You could see that we painted all of the exterior, so the new doors, new paint on the doors, and nice and bright blue, just exterior. Painted the fencing as well, and again, some money on landscaping to just bring it to life and liven up the property. Consistent signage throughout, make it feel like more of a community, whereas it otherwise hadn't really been. And on the interior side, so again, a modest reno plan, but we took the wood look, cabinetry, just painted over white. We weren't getting much on the upgrades because they weren't that far from top of market, but we were able to get $50 to $60 on an upgrade, which is still a 10% increase from where they were. And we were doing these upgrades for $2,000 or $3,000. It's still going to be this type of a place. It's a small unit, so you're only going to be able to hit such a ceiling in rents. But we spent $2,000 to $3,000 a unit, elevated the tenant base a little bit, and just provided a cleaner, more modern living environment. So some of the challenges, lots of delinquency. I touched on that already. We were expecting that fully. We inherited a bunch of tenants that I don't know what type of screening they were doing. So the transition over the first, and I touched on it on the second bullet there, in January to March, the fact that they were running with such high delinquency, they offered a lot of concessions. During that first year of ownership, we dropped down almost to 70% occupancy, which is a huge dip. The important thing was that we had the right processes in place to be able to jump back from that very, very quickly. This is definitely on an occupancy side for any deal that was quote unquote stable at purchase, the lowest it has dropped. But that said, we were able to just leverage our team and frankly our property managers' experience in that marketplace to really go to the right local businesses to attract the right people to step into those units. We were very firm on this deal on the delinquency side. We wanted to squash that right away. So we set policies that either force people to begin paying on time or we would feel the pain right now and upfront. And then lastly, if there's going to be something that we weren't expecting, is that we dealt with transition of a number of different on-site managers. We had the same maintenance guy that was awesome and he was there the entire time, but our office manager, either from the first one not being good or the second one there being room for improvement, we actually replaced two people with the same name, oddly enough, so not going to hire another penny. But the third one had a baby that decided that they'd rather be at home, ultimately landing on our fourth one, who was awesome and just the right fit. So we went through in the first, even in the first probably 9 months, 4 different office managers. So there just wasn't that same consistency that we would have liked. But at the same time, we were able to make that change, do it swiftly, and adjust. And at the end of the day, with any deal that you do, whether you're the lead or an investor or just a fly on the wall watching, you're going to have your known knowns, and then there's also going to be the known unknowns that sure it could happen, but it may or may not happen, and you need to be prepared to adjust for it and react. So with that, at sale, like I said, this is a deal we held for 2.5 years. We never went into it with the hold this deal for 10, 15 years type of a hold mentality. Sometimes we do have that as a company. Our reason to not do that on this one was driven primarily by the market that it's in. I think it's a pretty stable, strong market, generally speaking. But it only has so many industries that are really driving it. I know there's a shipbuilding component. There's some level of education. There's the military component, which is big, and tourism. And we just really prefer for our longer term holds and projects, and especially at this period in 2019, we like to look at deals that are just a larger population base, a larger pool of employers, where we would expect that during a recession, those would be the types of areas that would be hit less hard and be able to bounce back much quicker. But in this case, like I said, shorter term hold period, we held it for 2.5 years, sold the property for a little over $3,400,000. Investors realized over 50% on their money in 2.5 years. So everyone went home with a smile. So this is one of many case studies that we're going to put together. What I would say is if you have any questions, comments about this video, feel free to type them in the comments below. We'll definitely respond. Happy to share anything when it comes to numbers and just be a resource. So thanks for listening in, and we'll talk soon.